Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
We
Ron.
hear you. We hear you.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to be doing an introduction to meta-analysis and review manager, which is also called RevMan, part 1 next week. Next week is part 2. Don't go. All right, so acknowledgements to the 4 seniors that have helped me learn about this program. Abdullah, Mark, Yahia, and Mahmood. They've all taught me about this, and that's how I learned. Goals for today would be the importance of a meta-analysis in the research world. What is a PRISMA checklist? How to find an idea, how to conduct a literature search, how to do the data synthesis, data collection, what the different statistical models are, how to interpret it in heterogeneity, how to publishing tips, and then the review manager program itself. So the ultimate goal is getting one of your articles published on PubMed. And you can see these are 4 articles published from our residency itself. And yeah, so this is the ultimate goal. So the importance of a meta-analysis is, well, first the definition. A meta-analysis is a quantitative, formal epidemiological study design used to systematically assess the results of previous research to derive conclusions about that body of research. So basically, you have 10 randomized controlled trials. You conduct a meta-analysis that evaluates all those 10 trials. And instead of having 10 different trials, you just have one large meta-analysis of all the patients and all the studies, and you try to derive one conclusion from all those studies. So the importance of a meta-analysis, I feel like when I initially started, I felt like randomized controlled trials were the top of the pyramid. But as per this traditional pyramid, you can see that meta-analysis is actually at the top of the triangle. And now we have this revised pyramid where you can see case series, case control, cohort, and randomized control trial. And the wavy lines are saying that they don't really know if the case control or the case series are better. It's still not defined. And then the systematic review and meta-analysis have a magnifying glass on all of those studies. So this is actually the revised event-based pyramid for right now. So the PRISMA-SCR checklist. Now it stands for Preferred Reporting and Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis Extension for Scoping Reviews. The objectives of this checklist, and I'll show you what the checklist is, it's to provide guidance and improve the reporting of the scoping reviews. So it shows you how to do it if you're just starting off on doing a meta-analysis. It increases the relevance of the scoping reviews for decision-making. So I'm not going to go into every detail of the PRISMA checklist. It's, like I said, it's a checklist, but it tells you how to do a title. It tells you how to do an abstract, the introduction, what you should include in the introduction, how you go through the methods, and on the second page, it shows you how to do the results and the discussion. So it's a checklist to how to do a meta-analysis for introduction. Now, the third part of the PRISMA checklist is conducting what is making this table here, or sorry, this figure. And I'll show you how to make it next week in the RevMan workshop itself. But you go through and you start off with how many, at the top right here, you start off with how many articles you started with. And then you, based on how many articles you exclude over here, you go down here, how many articles you evaluated in the full text, and how many articles you included in your own meta-analysis. And that way it shows the reviewers and the audience how you went from started with 1,000 articles, but you only ended up with 5. So you have to show how you got there. So how to find an idea. I feel like this is one of the hardest ways to do a meta-analysis. You can know how to do a meta-analysis, but how do you find the idea to do a meta-analysis? So from the year and a half that I've been doing this, I feel like it's easiest to start backwards. You don't think of an idea and then do the meta-analysis. What I do is I find a recently published randomized control trial that piques my interest. So I search in the cardiology journals that JACC and Euro interventional and heart rhythm for recently published randomized controlled trials. And then I go from there. I don't think, oh, I think aortic stenosis is cool. I find the randomized controlled trial. If it's on aortic stenosis, then that's, I mean, perfect. But if it's on TAVR, then I'm going to go with that instead. And then from that, you go look at find the latest meta-analysis. So therefore, I go to Google Scholar or PubMed, and I find the last meta-analysis. And I forgot to include this, but I can pull up one on my computer. There's for the meta-analysis, there's going to be in the methods. It'll say until which date it conducted its studies, because it may have been published in 2020. But it may have stopped its search in 2018. And that's the date that's more important, not the 2020, but the 2018. So if your recently randomized controlled trial was published in 2019 and the meta-analysis was published in 2020, but it stopped its search in 2018, your randomized controlled trial is now new to that meta-analysis. And that's what's important. You want to find a new randomized controlled trial. After you find the latest meta-analysis, you're going to conduct a full literature search through all databases you can find. And the top ones I'll show you next are like PubMed. I think I have it next. Yeah, so PubMed, Embase, Cochrane, and then you can go into Google Scholar if you want, Science Direct, Sirius. These are less ones that you can use, but Web of Knowledge, Central, Scopes. And then most meta-analysis that you want to do, you want to include full text articles. So like they include intro, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. However, if you're struggling to find new studies, you can include what's called the meeting abstracts. So like they just made a poster and they just have a 250 abstract online, but it's a randomized controlled trial. They just haven't published the full study yet. So if you're struggling to find a new studies, you can include the meeting abstracts if you need to. With each engine, the tip that Abdullah and Mahmood have given me, they when you go through PubMed or Embase, you write down what you searched and how many results you searched, so that you can make this table more easily.
Code blue adult,
So for the selecting the studies.
code blue adult, 3 west, ICU, room 20. Code blue adult, 3 west, ICU, room 20.
So for the literature search, how to select a study, the number one study you're going to want to pick is a randomized controlled trial. The number two study you can pick is an observational study if you're having trouble finding enough studies to do a meta-analysis. You're going to exclude any study that mentions the word sub-analysis, registries, case reports, or review articles. Sub-analysis is that they are using the same patient population that a different randomized control trial did, but all they're doing is they're evaluating like 30 of the 100 people that they did. So those people are already in the database. So you would not want to include a sub-analysis. A registry, how do you explain the registry?
It depends on the registries. Not all registry can be included or excluded. The idea from all of these studies is that the second point is more important, that you need two similar arms in this study. Some registries can compare two arms compared to each other, and some of them they only report, let's say the TAVR registry, they report incidence of stroke after TAVR. This is only a one arm, the reporting outcome, so that's useless. But the main thing, you don't really need to know exactly which studies to exclude, but the main thing is that you need two arms that are getting compared against each other, and Rohan will talk about the clinical outcomes.
So when you're looking at these randomized controlled trials, you want it to be a 2-arm study, which is a randomized controlled trial, and you want it to be comparing similar, like the arms should be similar in all the studies. So one arm can be placebo, but the other arm has to be something else. And so like I wrote here, low pressure versus CORAG. You're comparing the medication against a different medication, but in each study, it's the same 2 arms. So it can't be in one study low pressure versus Coreg, and then the next study low pressure versus labetalol. It has to be the same medication in the same two studies. And then you need the studies to evaluate the same outcomes as well, not just the same trials. So the most common outcomes I do are clinical safety and efficacy. And I listed a couple of them here. They're going to be cardiac related because that's really what I do. So all-cause mortality, cardiovascular mortality, rate of MIs, rate of strokes, rate of major adverse cardiovascular event. And then you can also do like improvement in ejection fraction, improvement in end diastolic pressure, or the, like I wrote PHQ-9 because I've done a questionnaire before, like the improvement in a subjective score on a questionnaire, the improvement in an ABI, improvement in an NYHA class. So it doesn't just have to be mortality. You can, based on what the studies are reporting, if enough studies are reporting the same outcome, you can do a meta-analysis on it. So risk of bias. This is just a slide to discuss how there's different biases in different studies. So the English language bias is that reviewers typically exclude papers published in languages other than English. And how I've come to circumvent this is that if I find a study, and usually the cardiac ones have studies or published studies in Japanese journals, is I always email the medical library over here by the RCC, and they'll, like, I don't even have to talk to them. I know their email, I text them or I email them, hey, can you find this study for me in English? And they look and they try and then they can't find it and then they email me back. And then if the one they can't email me back, it goes in this trial here that one of these studies that I excluded was not in English. And that way people know that there was a study that I couldn't exclude. Or I've had, like, one was in Chinese and I had anyone translate it for me. So that's also something you can do. A citation bias is studies with significant or positive results are referenced in other publications as compared to studies with inconclusive or negative findings. So those come up more often on Google Scholar if they have more citations. Publication bias is selective publication of articles that show the positive treatment or effects and statistical significance, similar to the citation bias, essentially. So data collection, it's performed by two independent authors. So if I'm the first author, Bill is the second author, then I'll show you a sample meta-analysis next week, but in the methods, you'll say two independent authors, and in parentheses, you'll say my initials and Abdullah's initials. And that way it shows that two authors conducted the study. It's to ensure that it's accurate and reproducible. Then you're going to go through, once you find your study and you have all your studies on your desktop, you're going to go through and make a table. And it's going to call table 1. It's called the study characteristics. And what I usually include in this first table is the first author's last name, the acronym, so like Rocket AF or Prevent AF, something like that, whatever they named their study, the year that it was published, whether it's a randomized controlled trial observational study, if it's a single or multi-center study. And then sometimes if you need space to fill up the table, you can include the inclusion criteria. So were they patients who were greater than 85, had to have AFib, no history of aortic valve repair, so stuff like that. How was the patients included? How many patients were in each study, or sorry, in each arm? What are the different arms? Were they low pressure versus Coreg or low pressure versus labetalol? And then how long did the study conduct the follow-up? So 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, stuff like that. And then in table 2, you're going to create a table with the patient characteristics. So this one, if I do either the study acronym or the last name, whatever's most common, and then the year of the study. So these two are the similar from table 1. It's just to make the information the same. And then in table 2, I include the age of the mean age of the patients in each group, the percentage of males or the percentage of females, whichever you fancy, the race, smokers, percentage of smokers, and then you can do in percentage of hypertension, hyperlipidemia, diabetes, COPD, whatever is pertinent to your case and your topic. So then you're going to make an outcome data table. Now this outcome data table is not actually published. It's just recommended that you make it so that if I make it on my Google Drive, that I can share with Abdullah and Abdullah can check it and edit when I made a mistake. So you make an outcome data table, then you find your outcome data, you make your extraction table, and then you convert that extraction table into a RevMan. And the RevMan I'll show you at the end of the presentation. And this outcome data is the clinical safety or efficacy outcomes, however many outcomes you can find. Now, statistical models. So there's two different models you can pick in RevMan. One is called the fixed effect model. The second is called random. So fixed effect assumes that the studies are pooled identically, resulting in equal weight to the pooled studies. Now that's probably not ideal. So most often we do the random effects model, where it gives weight to the studies based on the sample size of the individual study. So if one study had 1,000 patients and one study had 100 patients, the RevMan will automatically give the study with 1,000 patients a higher weight. And that's what the beauty of the RevMan is. So heterogeneity. Heterogeneity in RevMan is called I2. So you'll see that a lot in meta-analysis, but heterogeneity, it can be classified into 3 different types. Clinical heterogeneity, where the variability is in the participants, interventions, and outcomes. And you try to minimize that to include the same kind of population, the same kind of arms, and include the same outcomes. The methodological heterogeneity is the variability in the study design, and you're going to try to reduce that by including the same kind of studies. Statistical heterogeneity is going to be variability in the intervention effects being evaluated in different studies. So that could be due to clinical, methodological, or both of the heterogeneity. So it's basically a sum. So like I said, heterogeneity is indicated as I2, and there's 3 different scores. So low is 0 to 25, moderate is 25 to 50, and then high is 75 to 100. And you can address heterogeneity by the double check data, or you can double check your data by myself doing it and then Abdullah doing it, or you can go back and doing it yourself again. You can, if it's too high, if it's like 99% on all your forest plots, you can quit and find another idea while you're ahead. You could do a sensitivity analysis where you can exclude one study. Now this you can do in RevMan. The meta regression, I have not figured out how to do this, and I think you would need a statistician to do that. But you can do the exclude one study test in RevMan, and I could show you how to do that. So publishing tips. So there's 3 types of ways you can publish a meta-analysis. You can go to a conference abstract, you can do a short meta-analysis, or you could do a full-length meta-analysis. A conference abstract, you really just need to add 1 to 2 studies to a previous meta-analysis. I've added 1 study to a meta-analysis and got it published at an abstract, so it's not too difficult. But let's say there's never been a meta-analysis done before, then you need at least 2 studies to do a abstract. A short meta-analysis, you would want to add 2 studies to a previous meta-analysis, at least 2 studies. Now, if you've got 3 or more studies, you would want to do a full-length meta-analysis. That's how you would know. You could also do a full meta-analysis if you only have 2 studies, but you find a way to do a new subgroup analysis. And I could, basically what a subgroup analysis is, I have a picture later, but it's basically comparing the different studies. I'll show you later. It's easier if I show you. All right, so this is a forest plot. Now, what I have here is that this is my first subgroup. It's called the randomized control trials. Now, my second subgroup is observational studies. And these results down here are all the studies pulled together. As you can see, your main attention is drawn to the forest, diamonds. So as you can see here, this diamond is on the right side, which favors the standard drug-eluting scent, which I was doing in this manuscript. And then this diamond is really pretty much in the middle. So it's not favoring anything. Now, if it was over here, it would favor the combo, which is the experimental one that I was trying to do. And then over here, this one is kind of favoring the standard, But now, after you find these, you want to look at your p-values. So the p-values that you're going to want to look at is this one on the bottom line, not this one over here. You want this p-value. So you can see this one is favoring the standard group, and it's pretty significant because it's less than 0.05, right? It's 0.001. You don't want this p-value right here. That's what you're not going to want to include that one. Now, this p-value is 0.85, and as you can see, this one was in the middle, so it's not significant. There was no difference in the observational studies between these two arms, but it was statistically favoring the standard arm in the randomized control trials, if that makes sense. Now, what I've highlighted in blue is called the risk ratios. This one up here, this is your risk ratio right here, 1.49. And then these two numbers here is your 95% confidence interval. So 1.17 to 1.90 is your 95% confidence interval. And then same thing for the observational studies. What I've highlighted in purple is your I2, your heterogeneity number. So 0%. So basically the forest plot, the p-value, the I2, and the 95 confidence interval are all indicating that this is a significant study, that this and the results of this meta-analysis is significant. Then the last thing that you want to include, something you want to at least look at is the total events, the one in red. So the 163 is how many events was in this total arm right here. If you add all these up, it's 163. Now the 2,233 is how many patients were total. And then same thing in all of these red. Now I've crossed out this black one over here because this is those total, the pooled of all the studies. Now I don't really include that sometimes. I usually base on the subgroup analysis, unless this is statistically significant, like more than either of these two analyses. Make sense? So this is the forest plot that I included this one because this is focusing on the subgroup analysis, where this one is the first one includes all studies that included sirolimus sirolimus stents, and then the second one is everolimus stents, third is paclitaxel, and then the fourth is combination of sirolimus and zolidlurmus. Now notice how I couldn't combine this study, this one Dutch peers remedy study, in the sirolimus study with the mascot and everything else, because this is different, right? I couldn't pool this one with that because this one used zolidlurmus. So that one difference excluded that study from this sirolimus. But as you can see, I did a subgroup analysis where I compared the sirolimus versus everolimus versus paclitaxel, and I believe it was the fact that that I was trying to show that none of the. So what I was trying to show is that there was no difference in any of the in any of the studies that included stents, because if we go back. I don't know how to go back. So if I show you here now, this was statistically significant, right, on this forest plot. However, when you do a subgroup analysis, it's showing that none of this different stents was significant. And so that's why I did the subgroup analysis, because when I pulled all of these studies together, it told me that it was statistically significant, but when I separated it, it was not. And so that's kind of interesting. So this is the RevMan. It's Statistical Review Manager 5.4 Cochrane. And if you search that into Google, you can download it. And this would be, when you download it, that's how it's going to look. There's actually a YouTube video that goes through how to do the RevMan. And I pasted the link here. That's all I have for today. I didn't know it would only take 30 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I can go through Redman.
I
don't have
no,
anything
we don't need
prepared.
to. Let's give it time because we'll probably send them a slide.
Yeah,
But the main thing out of all of this is the whole backward thing where you need to find an idea that works. And just kind of summarizing what Rohan has been talking, because I wasn't here the last 10 minutes. But the idea is that you need to study optimally. It's a randomized clinical trial, but it doesn't have to be. But you need both arms. They're getting compared against each other and they're looking for outcomes. Sometimes these clinical outcomes like death and mortality and all of the other things that Rohan mentioned, sometimes they're not clinical outcomes. Sometimes it's about how much they were able to dilate the stent or how much was the size of the valve pre and post procedures and all, whatever it is, they're comparing outcomes between two arms. If the study has one arm, then it's completely useless. And then once you find the study that is comparing two outcomes, as Rohan mentioned, that you go back to see if there's been any meta-analysis published in the same topic that looked at the same or the same outcomes or part of these outcomes. If you can find one, great. You can build your search on that one. But if you do not, that's even better. It means this is probably a new ideas and a meta-analysis has not been published in the same topic. If you find one, as Rohan mentioned, that the publication date is different than the search date. The idea is that you want to know when did they do their literature search. If they did it in 2018 in June, you can check on from the day that you had the new study till the day that they did their own search and collect all the studies that have been published since then, and then you can combine everything into each other. I don't know how much this will work in non-cardiology fields, to be completely honest. I don't know. But in cardiology, it's pretty easy. You can get a study published in PubMed every 2 weeks. Literally, you can find a new idea once every 2 weeks and get it published in PubMed within a couple of weeks after. It's very simple if you do it right, and it's not time consuming. The only time consuming part is the discussion part, and it's still, you can do it within 2 days. Right. Exactly. And what Tyler is mentioning, that just to kind of highlighting, like, you do not need an IRB approval. You do not need anything. You can do everything on your own, literally like the entire thing within a week. Find the idea, write the whole manuscript, do the analysis and submit it within 1 week. And there are still some tricks. If it's not a huge study, you can publish it with, like, we had a couple of studies the last 3-4 weeks. We submit them on Monday, they get accepted by Wednesday, and they get published 2 weeks after. It's very simple. It's not time consuming. You don't need to go through the IRB or anything. It all depends on you and how much time you put into it.
Actually, I was wondering, so do you guys like feel the need of a statistician at some point, or?
I can't hear you. Sorry. Say that again.
Can you hear me now? Do you guys feel the need of having a statistician on board at some point, or?
It depends. So there are a couple of things that we have now. There's something called meta-regression, which you control for other factors while you compile these data. The Rubman software does not do meta-regression. This way you will need a statistician to be able to do this on the R software. So if you want to do a meta-regression, then you'll need a statistician. But if you're doing just the basic Rivman things, you do not need a statistician.
Oh, yeah, that's what.
Yeah, because another things that also, like, because this is just a very brief introduction, but for the next lecture, we're going to show these tables. And at least for me, even if you pull all, let's say, the baseline characteristics between the study, I can do t-test and chi-square using Excel. So I can do that on my own without the need any of a statistician or anything.
That's great. Yeah, I'm so glad that you're doing this. Only thing with my interest being in hem-onc, we don't have those many measurable outcomes like you guys have, I think still we can do something with choice of anticoagulants, like your 5 things, and then
exactly
find some random stuff, like you guys took AFib, but AFib and valvular, non-valvular, but something else,
Yes,
yeah.
half of my studies are about DOACs and warfarin anyways. half hem-onc, half cardiology. So from hematology standpoint, there may be more things that can be done. And even like for pulm critical care, you can always look, like one thing that I don't know if it's been done before or not, but like the submassive PE and how people don't know for catheter directed thrombolytics versus systematic thrombolytics. There's always things getting published in this topic, but finding kind of the right, finding the right topic from the studies that are getting published is the easiest way. Because when I started doing this 2 years ago, I wasted 3 or 4 months of my life trying to find the perfect idea, and then I do literature search and it doesn't work. So the backward thing literally saves you every time. You don't need to look for an idea. The ideas come for you. You just need to check the journals and see what's getting published every week. In the cardiology journals, every journal has a new issue every Monday or Tuesday. So I used to, like, when I wanted to do all of this, every Monday would check all their websites, get 3-4 ideas, one of them work, we get it done, get it published within a couple of weeks.
This is like, kind of, I'm glad you're doing it. I'm thinking if, we can do something like from hem-onc people, like,
And for
we haven't.
hem-onc, even if it's more complicated, you can always talk to Ling Wang. She is the statistician of the Department of Medicine. She helped me with all of my regression statistics. I've done retrospective studies. She did simple and multivariate regression for me for the retrospective study, but she's always available and more than happy to help anyone, even if the meta-analysis or your data, they're not simple. You cannot use the RivMan to kind of pull everything. She is very good, very nice. She can do any analysis for you, no matter. She has a PhD in statistics. She's a statistician and she works with the Department of Medicine.
Thank you for doing this. Yeah. Okay, we'll take a break.
Dr.
Yeah, and great presentation, Rohan. Good job. Yeah.
Thanks, Priya.
Very, very informative. Yeah.
Dr. Winks helped me too, and she works with MSU, so she's more than willing to help with our residency. I just put up a random meta-analysis I found online. So this is the abstract, and if you look here, this is what we were talking about, where it was published in 2005, but they ended their search in May 2003. So when you're looking for a new study, you would only start in May 2000 or like June 2003, because after that, that's when you want your studies. You will not look before. And usually these times are like 2020, and then they pick like November. And so you only have like 14 months to look through.
And just in general, in cardiology or non-cardiology, if you have an idea and you think it might work, you can always talk to me and Rohan to see if it can actually work or not. Like, this does not stop here. It's, if you can do it, especially for the non-cardiology people, if you find the way or topics that can be done within your specialty, I think that would be a huge thing to add a lot of publications to your CV. Because it takes me like literally 10 minutes to see if this idea will work or not.
And the big thing is once you find an idea, there's at least 10 other people who also found that same idea. So once you publish it, once you find the idea, you wanna get it out. So to end my presentation,
Did you show them the YouTube?
no, I didn't. I can pull up the actual YouTube. So
just the link.
Yeah, so what I would do for the next part is, if you're interested in this RevMan, there's my next session on Thursday, I'm going to do a demonstration and tutorial of going through the RevMan and inputting data to create that forest plot that I showed you. If you want to follow along, I would download the RevMan 5.4 so that you can follow and ask questions. If you have an idea and you want a second look, you can email me or Abdullah. So I hope nobody's lost, but I am. All right, so this is the YouTube. I don't know how to get the sound on here.
It's okay, they don't need
Yeah.
actively, but it's.
So this one just came out. It's the 5.4, and they go into what is a RevMan or how to do the RevMan. Eventually, they're going to pull it up. Come on. I guess not. Here, this one. So this is how a finished Redman looks, where you got the studies on the left side and the forest plot. And then I think they'll go through. So this is how the Redman opens, and they just walk you through on how to enter a study, and then how to get the study into Redman. And how to, this is the data, the models I was talking about, if you want to pick fixed or random. So we always do inverse, random, and then these open up and you can do the risk ratio. Yeah. And then, I don't know what's happening here. And then this is like you fixing up the graphs so that where I had combo and standard, this is the left side and the right side, and they literally write in there favors experimental, favors control. So you know which side is which one you should write in. It's literally writes it out for you. And then they go into how to put the data, which I'll do next time on the didactics.
And this like whole software, if you have a high school degree, you'll be able to master it in 2 hours.
Thank you for that disclaimer. It was important.
Because it looks like kind of complicated, but literally high school degree is enough for you to master the software.
It's okay. I called Abdullah late at night at 10 o'clock
Yes.
and had him show me how to put data. So that's why we're doing this presentation. And that's all I have for today. Any questions?